How you doing, Dan?
How's it going? Quite the intro. Thanks, Oz. We're here today to talk to you about asset tokenization and more generally updating the world's financial infrastructure. To start off with quick introductions, I'm Dan Reecer, one of the two co-founders of the Wormhole Foundation.
I'm Gabriel, Trindade. I'm with the TCM team at MB Corporate. And just trying to act as if this isn't my first time talking to an audience like this or at a stage like this, but everything other than that is just fine.
Let's do it.
Good, let's get to it. We're here today to talk about tokenization, this very flashy, very trendy word that's been thrown around a lot. And I think the best way to approach this is to try and explain it through a business case. I think bringing a little bit of context to how tokenization is applied in the real world before we jump into the concept. And obviously doing that through a case with MB. Just bear with me here for like 2 or 3 slides while I bring this context, and then we'll jump into the concept. So MB started off as exclusively a crypto exchange in 2013. But pretty soon, we noticed that it's very hard and challenging to build a steady business depending on the volatility of crypto. So just around 2019, we started looking at other things. We started looking at transaction banking with our payment institution license with the Brazil Central Bank, and we went into tokens as well. We started creating an ecosystem that obviously crypto is still the bread and butter of MB, but we started dipping our feet into a few different lines of businesses in order to diversify the business model. And when we look at tokens, another name for this is called real-world assets. And I'm going to ask you guys to memorize that acronym. We're going to get back to that in a few minutes. But tokens are nothing more, nothing less than real-world assets made digital. Where is it? So where is MB today? Just to close this brief introduction off. Today, MB is the largest digital asset platform in Brazil, the 3rd largest real-world asset tokenization platform in the world. And just remember, we just started in 2019 doing this business. So these are pretty solid numbers. We have over 4 million customers in our client base and invested by some pretty solid names in the Brazilian financial sector. But let's get down to it. What is tokenization? And how are we approaching this within MB? Tokenization is not that different from the regular debt capital markets process that everybody's used to in the traditional investment banks and other big players, right? What tokenization does is it inputs an additional layer of technology at the very end of the process. So if you look at the slide here above me, you're going to see that the first 4 stages, financial modeling, conceptualization, structuring, they're very similar to what you see in the regular traditional players when issuing debt. What MB does is bring an additional layer of technology through blockchain, listing and bundling that asset up and listing it as a token and making that available as an investment option into retail and the general public, right? And you can use a bunch of different underlying assets to do that, right? We use debt issuances with our corporate clients. And these are just a few examples here that are the real-world assets that I was talking about that you are able to bundle up and package into a token and offer as an investment. I'm going to use the example of the payroll-deductible loans on the top right. We Brazilians know this as consignado loans. So there are a bunch of companies in Brazil that offer consignado loans for people to anticipate their payrolls, right? Eventually, they create this huge portfolio loan. And let's say this company wants to develop, to bring in more people, enhance their credit portfolio. They want to issue a debt. In our example here, a possibility is that we acquire that portfolio of loans from them and pay them up front for them to proceed with their business model. And we tokenize that portfolio loans in which the yield for the token will be coming from that portfolio. So this is just one of the examples. We can do that for credit card receivables. We can do that for account receivables. Any type of receivable that is standardized can be bundled up into a token and offered as an investment to the general public. But why would a company choose to do that when they have this already very stable traditional debt issuance method that everybody's super used to, that's been around for decades, there are a number of advantages, both on the issuer side and on the investor side for a tokenization process. For the issuer side, the first thing is that they're tapping into a new funding alternative, a new funding pocket. Why is that? The funding is coming from the individuals, our 4 million individuals from our client base that are buying these tokens. They are the ones providing funding to these companies, rather than in the usual debt issuance market, where this funding usually comes from institutional investors, and they react in a similar manner depending on the macroeconomic scenarios. So number one, there's this a new pocket we are offering for companies to issue and bring in funds. Also, this is a much more seamless, transparent, and easy process, right, Dan? We don't use B3 or SetCheapy to register these assets. They're registered directly on blockchain. That makes things cheaper and easier for an issuance. On the investor side, there's a big tax incentive. The tokens are under what we call the crypto tax framework. So if you're investing in a token today, you have a threshold of up to 35,000 reais per month in redemptions, in which you're not going to pay 1 cent in tax. So this is a very big option for optimizing your investment structure as an individual. And just before I hand it off to you, Dan, I think there's something missing here in this slide here. Don't you think?
I think so too.
Well, let's get back to that in a few minutes. I'm pretty sure I'll remember it. In regards to our issuance history, I think the main idea here is we're starting to identify a pattern. Every angle we look at tokenization, we're seeing that there's a huge appetite being developed for these type of assets in the financial market itself. If you look at it from the total loans issued, we're already seeing exponential growth over the last few years. If you look at the number of companies that are looking to us to issue new debt and tokenize them, we're seeing an exponential growth. If we look at how many token holders we're having also exponential growth. How many financial advisors seek us to distribute our product? Also. So we're identifying a pattern that we're using our distribution ecosystem to enhance our distribution more and more and more. But I still think there's what's the next big step here? We're still trying to find out where do we go from here? We're seeing success in Brazil. This is obviously a huge thesis of offshore, but what about where do we go from here? We're growing, but I feel like there's a huge step here that needs to be made, Dan. And between you and me, we really believe it's an international step, offering Brazilian products to Americans, to Europeans, products that offer 20, 22% return to a client base that's not used to those level of rates. And why not even bring international assets down here to Brazil and offer them as a natural hedging solution for investors in Brazil? I love to invest in a US index product that would protect me against the Brazilian real devaluation. Why not? But I really want to hear your thoughts about this, if you agree, and if you have, what do you have to tell us about this today?
Yeah, definitely. I think we're very excited about the potential for Mercado Bitcoin's products, and I'll move to the next slide, to scale globally, like Gabriel just mentioned. But we're thinking about this in two different ways. Mercado Bitcoin scaling globally in terms of physical geography, but what he also just showed you was all these tokenized assets that are on blockchains. And today, Mercado Bitcoin's assets are on one, maybe two different blockchains. And what we're excited to announce today is that Wormhole and Mercado Bitcoin are partnering to expand Mercado Bitcoin's assets both globally and also across all major blockchain networks. This will make a little bit more sense on the next few slides when I explain what Wormhole does. But I want to first get into a couple of the goals around the partnership between Mercado Bitcoin and Wormhole. One thing that Gabriel showed was all those charts going up and to the right, but I think he was being a bit humble and not showing the numbers in terms of what Mercado Bitcoin is seeing in terms of investment levels. Today, Mercado Bitcoin is at $200 million US, or about 1 billion Brazilian reais, in terms of AUM on chain today on these blockchains. But our goal immediately is to get that from 200 million to 1 billion to 10 billion and continue to grow that. And part of the approach to wanting to expand from one blockchain to multiple is you're essentially expanding your total addressable market on blockchains. If you think about Uber, for example, Uber didn't launch their business in the United States and just stay in the United States. They launched in Europe after that, maybe Africa, South America. They wanted to launch globally. We think about this the same way in terms of blockchains. If you're launching an asset or an application on one blockchain, your goal should be, and now it usually is, to launch that across all major blockchains where all the activity is, just like you would launch a physical company in all the major markets in the world. The other part of this is our goal is also to start embedding Mercado Bitcoin's assets. Right now they have a lot of their AUM in private credit. We want to start getting this embedded in decentralized finance applications on blockchains like Ethereum, like Solana, and a lot of the other major blockchains around the ecosystem. What Wormhole is an interoperability platform. It's a very long word. It's difficult to say in basically every language in the world, but what it comes down to is connectivity between blockchains. So a little bit of context as far as why connectivity between blockchains is needed. This is a chart showing the number of active blockchains that are active over the last decade. This is clearly a growing trend and will continue to grow. This also shows the ratio between decentralized exchange activity and centralized exchange activity. And the trend is also coming on-chain, as we say, more in a decentralized manner. So because of this on-chain activity, you need more connectivity between all the major networks. In a similar chart, this is tokenized assets. So what Gabriel just gave the background on, this can include private credit, like Mercado Bitcoin is working on. It could also include treasury bills. It's going to include real estate, anything like that. And this chart continues to grow exponentially every week. So like I mentioned, interoperability, Wormhole is here to just connect all these major networks together. If you're a Brazilian, you use Pix probably every day. What Wormhole is essentially Pix for blockchains. Pix is connecting all the major banks together in Brazil. Wormhole is connecting all the major blockchains together for movement of data and value between them. And like Oz mentioned, I like analogies. This is another analogy for you to understand what we're building with this interoperability network. The internet that we use today, all the businesses that are built on top of it are functioning on a global internet that seems like it works just like magic. You connect to the Wi-Fi here in this building, but what's actually happening is you're being connected to Africa, to Europe, all through cables that run under the ocean. These were built by human beings just like us, but back in the 1950s, 1960s. So the work was put in to connect the internet. And here we are 50, 60 years later with this flourishing economy on top. And we truly believe that this is happening right now with the blockchain and cryptocurrency industry, just building out that foundational infrastructure. So just a quick slide on what we do. We are an interoperability network, like I mentioned, and we're connecting traditional financial assets to blockchains. So Mercado Bitcoin is now, like I mentioned, one of the teams that we're working with. There's others like BlackRock and Apollo in the US who are also doing a lot with tokenized assets on blockchains, and we're helping connect them to all the major networks, which you can see here. I'm not going to go through all these by name, but we've covered 95 to 97% of all activity on blockchains. One thing that I wanted to mention, this has all been somewhat high level and telling the story in a great way, but just to take you kind of under the hood a little bit, security, as you're moving these assets between blockchains, security is the #1 priority for us at all times. So I wanted to just show you how this works kind of behind the scenes. Starting from the left is the source blockchain, let's call it Ethereum. There are 19 entities. These are known companies who specialize in validating, or you can kind of think of it like Bitcoin mining. Their job is to secure networks. So we have 19 validators who are watching every message that is sent through Wormhole, making sure that it's accurate and verified from the source blockchain, and then that message gets sent along to the destination chain, in this example, from Ethereum to Solana. So very simplified version of just showing you kind of the security mechanism that goes on behind the scenes. And this has been recognized by, we've talked a lot about the centralized world. Yeah. So Mercado Bitcoin, the leading exchange in Brazil. Uniswap is the kind of the equivalent in the decentralized world. They're the leading decentralized exchange. And they did a big security analysis on all the teams that are in the same category as Wormhole for cross-blockchain activity, and we were ranked the #1 most secure cross-chain protocol. And now, like Gabriel did at the end of his section, I wanted to show you some numbers just to make this a little bit more real and tangible. There is a lot of activity going on with exchanges like Mercado Bitcoin, with stable coins like USDT, USDC, billions of dollars in activity in the centralized world. But in the decentralized world, there is a lot going on as well. I've explained what Wormhole does, connecting all these chains together. The $59 billion number is what Wormhole has enabled in terms of cross-blockchain activity. So $1 million being sent from Ethereum to Solana adds up to about 59 billion over the last 4 or so years since Wormhole started. And this is a more zoomed in version of what I just showed. So this is just the last 30 days. There has been $350 million worth of crypto assets sent just from Ethereum in the last month, just to give you the idea of the scale we're talking about. And this is only growing exponentially, just like all the other charts that we've been showing you. And then finally, just to give you an idea of what is actually being sent, right now, some of the leading use cases in crypto, of course, are stablecoins. We talked about tokenized assets or tokenized real-world assets. USDT and USDC are exactly that. They are a tokenized version of the real-world US dollar. They're also doing the same thing with euros and even Brazilian reais. I saw Transfero here. They're doing a tokenized Brazilian reais, and there's several others in Brazil doing the same. So this is also a 90-day look, but 650 million in USDC alone just in the last 3 months. Just the activity is continuing to grow rapidly. So to wrap up, it's been a great time getting to talk to you guys, explain to you what Mercado Bitcoin does, what Wormhole does, and what we're excited about with this new partnership. There's a lot to come in terms of additional collaborations across the entire business of Mercado Bitcoin. Like I mentioned, our initial goal is to get AUM across assets under management, or AUM, across all these blockchains to $1 billion as quickly as possible. Part of that is geographic expansion. Part of that is expansion across blockchains. And that's it for today. Thank you all for the attention, and we'll be backstage if you have any questions following up.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.